Hi, everyone. I'm Regina Campbell, your host here at the Legal Zone, brought to you by the Campbell Law Group. And we want to welcome everyone back for Season 3, Episode 1 of the Legal Zone. Today we have a wonderful topic and speaker that we're going to discuss, and hopefully a rather uplifting topic to start your week off with. Our topic is going to be what focusing on wellness can do for your business, employees, and for your soul. Before we do get to our wonderful guest, as you can see waiting, this is Samantha Reynolds. We're just going to talk to you a little bit about the prior podcast to remind everyone what previously came in case you missed it. We had Miss Elise Kulik on, our Chief Privacy Officer from Intuit, where she gave us quite a bit of tips on basically U.S. data privacy laws and some intersection of the differences of European law, and sort of try to help us tame the chaos surrounding that area of law. Most important, she impressed upon us that now is extremely necessary, so to speak, to reach out to privacy officers and attorneys within your office and not to be afraid of them. You know, that they will not bite and they can actually be your best friend in this kind of legal and sort of business environment that we live in nowadays. And once again, we want to thank Ms. Hulik for coming on. But today we have an amazing speaker also that we're going to just change gears for a moment. And we're going to talk about your wellness. And we have the best speaker to do that. Mrs. Reynolds, Samantha, is a lifestyle architect, an international yoga teacher, and a creative entrepreneur based out of Miami, Florida. She is passionate about uplifting others through a holistic approach to well-being. Sam believes in transformative power of yoga and a healthy lifestyle to thrive in your everyday life. Her mission is also to help others find a healthy balance, and she believes everyone has the potential to thrive. Sam also advocates a healthy lifestyle and other public and private classes, in addition to designing lifestyle programs for residential buildings, developers, companies. She also creates events and experiences to facilitate peace, community, and joy. She has over 7 years experience in the wellness industry, and some of her clients include PMG, Capital One, Hyatt Hotels, Graystar, Biscayne Beach, Gables Engineering, and Body Glove. So a rather impressive list of clients that she's been able to help. But I want to start off actually the conversation talking to Ms. Reynolds about her amazing transformative sort of trip abroad, where it changed her life and many other people's lives, where she traveled to the Czech Republic, Rwanda, and she helped others. If we can start there, that'd be great, Ms. Reynolds.
Thank you so much again for having me on the podcast, and I'm so happy to share my journey with you. So it goes back quite some time to about 2007, 2008, when I was studying international administration with the hopes of becoming an international human rights lawyer at the University of Miami. And that's where I actually moved to the Czech Republic to study law at Charles University at the Faculty of Law for a semester abroad program, which 3 months ended up turning into 5 years living overseas in the Czech Republic, not in law, but rather developing and designing educational programs for the University of Miami in regards to Holocaust and genocide education.
Wow.
So I took a more hands-on approach and was in the field for 5 years, educating and guiding university students to concentration camps and various sites around Central Europe. So my background was I was always interested in post-conflict, ethnic conflict, and dare I say, genocide studies, and it really how do we get to a point in our life, or how does humanity get to that level of destruction, and what facilitates, what creates something like that. So for those years, I was really studying and analyzing really the nature of violence and the nature of war, and showing people life beyond that. So with that background, 5 years in Holocaust studies, Holocaust education, I was always curious and fascinated by Rwanda, the most recent genocide in our lifetime. Yeah. And how can a nation move beyond such suffering? And I had the opportunity one summer to go there through my own accord for a human rights program. And I spent 4 weeks on my own in Rwanda in 2012. And I fell in love with the country. I fell in love with the people. It's beautiful. And the power that they had to transform their country, their nation, after such profound atrocity was beyond me. I couldn't believe how much they've overcome and how you can still live peacefully despite all of the past suffering. With that in mind, I had the opportunity. So after 5 years of living in the Czech Republic, working in Holocaust studies, I was pretty much done. My soul had taken too much in that, I would say, that realm in the Czech Republic. And I decided to embark on another journey, and I moved to Rwanda to work for a nonprofit based out of New York City in Rwanda called Agahozo Shalom. And it was a youth village for orphan teens post-genocide, moving them out of the space of poverty and hopelessness into an area of hope and a potential to thrive. And so I spent a year living on site in Rwanda, rural East Africa, an hour outside of Kigali, not only being a mentor to 16 girls, but also being an advocacy and partnership assistant to the executive team. So basically, I was the correspondent between the New York board and the Rwandan staff. I was the middlewoman. So with these experiences, and mind you, at this time, I wasn't into wellness. I had never even studied yoga before. I never even practiced. I was too busy traveling the world and doing all of these things. So in my 20s, the thought of going to a yoga class just wasn't even in my vocabulary. It wasn't in my mindset. I don't even think I looked at a food label in that time either. So it was a very different mindset. It was a very different focus in my life. And everything changed when I moved back to the United States 6 years later. And I had this experience living not only in Europe, but in East Africa. And I came back not really knowing what it all meant anymore. I had such profound experiences that I didn't quite feel like I was European, and I wasn't African, and I didn't know where I belonged or fit in. And I had so much experience and no one to share it with. I didn't know how to communicate anymore.
Yeah.
I was plopped in the middle of Fort Myers, Florida. And it was at that time in my life where I needed to pause. I needed to take a break. And I needed to integrate everything that I had experienced overseas through the loss, through witnessing true suffering and hardship. And my mother actually introduced me to yoga. She gave me a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the texts of yoga. And she took me to my first class. And I was hesitant. I wasn't sure what I was doing, but when I went to my first yoga class, I thought, wow, I feel connected again. I feel at peace with myself and my body, and starting to create awareness with all of my experiences and integrating that into now, just making peace with it. And so I thought I was going to go back to higher education or administration, or move to New York City or DC and work my way up to an international NGO. And every door closed. It was like, no, Sam, you need to stay there. And so one thing led to the other, and I thought, well, fine. I'm going to stay in Fort Myers, and I'm going to study yoga. I'm going to learn about healthy eating. So it was the first time I read a food label. It's the first time I actually switched to being plant-based as well. And there started my wellness journey in 2014, 2015, taking a radical 180 approach. I mean, if you told me in 2013, 2014 that I would be teaching yoga on top of rooftops and designing wellness programs for PMG, I would have laughed at you. I would have laughed. This wasn't in my lifelong plan to teach yoga and to totally shift my life this way. And so here I am today with all of that experience that I learned not only in the Czech Republic, but in Rwanda as well, is how to move beyond suffering, how to thrive within our daily landscape, with all of the stress that is involved with work, with life, just the nature of being a human and everything that that entails. And so now what I do is I've realized there are a few key ingredients to health and well-being that are essential to what I do now.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because in Rwanda, I can't even imagine. It's very much still alive. I mean, you have still people that have suffered, like you indicated, orphans that are orphaned recent. It's not like it's 100 years, 200 years ago. So it's got to be very, not many people have probably had that experience where they're watching the aftermath. I assume the Hutu and the Tutsis, somehow they're able to coexist in other ways. And so there's healing despite the fact that there is so much vivid and recent trauma. And I think it's amazing because when you're talking, it's reminding me how humans have the ability, if they want to find that peace. Unfortunately, sometimes it comes after atrocities and things of that nature. And I understand why you would want to study, how do we get there? You know, how does a culture get there? How does that happen? So it seems like it's the pre and the post of it, but it seems to transform your life to understand that no matter what is happening, one, it sounds like you probably have a lot of gratitude for life, just like we complain about odds and ends and this traffic and that person and so forth. They bothered me, they cut me off. When they're able to kind of put aside those things, you bring out probably the most human element of people. And it gets down to its core. And it sounds like you've been trying to revive this show. It can be healed that way. Healing starts by taking care of yourself and probably letting go is my guess. That's why some of your literature talks about peace and community. Because at one point, if you can't let go, you can't heal either. So, and then like you said, bringing hope. I can't imagine what that must have been like, in those villages and seeing, for potentially the repercussions of a genocide, and then still being able to coexist and live, and try to move ahead. It's absolutely amazing. So I can only imagine, like you said, who am I? I don't quite fit in Africa. I don't quite fit here. I don't quite fit in Europe, because not many people would have had that experience that you've had, So it's pretty amazing. That's probably why you can bring an element to wellness and soulfulness that most people can't. So I think it sounds like your journey you were meant to do that. You were the right you're right person with the right idea and purpose and ability to absorb that. So I commend you. It's absolutely amazing, Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and hopefully everyone is listening and they hear this, because sometimes it's a very, very, after the pandemic and just in general, it's a very contentious world. And it's sort of like, some of us have been fighting, it's gotten to the point even in the United States that families are can't talk about politics because one feels one way passionately, the other feels another, and they just rather not talk about it. So we're kind of in a world where it's been sort of hyper partisan, it's just like, yikes. It's like very tense. And I'm sure it's the same way in people's jobs and everywhere else. So where do you find that peace? And then of course, work is stressful, right? I mean, this is not, work is stressful enough. Even if you enjoy it, it can be stressful, and life can be stressful with all the changes and things that happen. So it's pretty amazing. So how do you, what are your teachings about how people can change? Where do you start with wellness, especially if you were like that you didn't know anything about yoga, knew nothing about food, how do you start?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I think the curiosity is there. And I know that most people, dare I say all people, want peace in some way. The ability to sleep well at night and go to bed with a clear conscience and wake up with a smile the next day. And what I've noticed and what I found, your health is so important and linked to everything else in your life. And what I have found, and what was I would say the easiest thing for me when I moved back to the United States, was starting somewhere, committing to something small. If it's 10 minutes going for a walk outside, 20 minutes for a walk, but commit to it. Commit to something that you can build upon, but also something that's accessible for you. I see some people when they come to class, and it's doesn't matter whether they're flexible or not, but I always tell my students, we have a whole lifetime to work on this, but you have to start somewhere. So just show up. The first place is the willingness and desire. So just show up. We can do this our entire lifetime together. So I always invite everyone to commit to something, to have the commitment and the integrity to follow through. And I would say first, if something has to be you enjoy. What are you curious about? Is it walking outside? Is it going bike riding? Is it running? Is it yoga? And going from there, following your passion and following what makes you smile. That would be the first start. The second start that I think is what I hopefully I'm creating is the ability to volunteer easily. I think that is probably the overarching theme, more so than even attending a yoga class, but for the soulful well-being, the spiritual well-being, and the well-being of an entire community, making time to serve and getting out of your own head and your own stresses. And you can do that. There are a number of chances, a number of opportunities in your own backyard to be of service. And that's why I try to make it as accessible as possible in offering almost these volunteer meetups as a class that we go together once a month and serve meals at the homeless residents we each have in partnership, or even go build a vegetable garden and help in the hood. I mean, that requires very minimal effort. You don't need to be a bodybuilder to sign up for that. It's just serving meals 2 hours of your life. So I try to offer these things in a way that's accessible and fun, making it fun and making it so that you feel like you belong and you're working towards something.
Yeah, it's ironic you say that, because sometimes we think, like you're saying, people come to your yoga class and they're not very flexible. And it might be actually a stigma, or they feel embarrassed to come back, or they just can't do this, so they won't even try anymore. But that's the whole point. That's got to break down those barriers, and they also start with you. They feel comfortable. You don't have to be a bodybuilder. I can't tell you how many times I go to the gym and I see someone kind of timid in the corner, just trying to lift weights. And I'm like, we all start somewhere. And you should not do it because you feel like you're just a beginner. Everyone starts somewhere. And it's about getting after your comfort zone. I think it's a good point, because it might get you to volunteer, it'll get you to take care of yourself. But I think there's sometimes that fear, like, no, or I can't do that. It's, even when you're in pain, I can't do yoga, my neck hurts or my back hurts or something. Actually, it's the perfect time to do it, So I think that's really, really important. So how do you bring this to businesses? So how can a business owner sort of help their employees? Like when you say you create programs and wellness programs for other companies, does that incorporate some of what we're talking about, or help them bring it to the workplace, or just involve that also time for employees, maybe to get them into these different programs or thought process?
It does. So I have a number of strategies, let's call them. And I have my corporate clients who purely need wellness classes, weekly wellness classes, and I will help them design a program based on their needs and what they're missing. And in that respect, perhaps the service doesn't come into play, or the other events that I do offer, although I do bring that to their attention. And then I would say the other factor that I offer, and this is primarily for developers in residential properties, which has been quite successful, I offer a package for the residents. And with the residential programming, all of the events and wellness classes are designed around wellness, connection, growth, service, and joy. So there's the element of fun. And in offering this, it brings value. All of these spaces, all of these buildings, there's a desire to belong. There's a desire to connect. It's a common human value that we all hold. So with my volunteer programs, everywhere I go, and no matter what I offer, whatever company I work with, it's all united under service. So I offer this to everybody, and that's where I find the ripple effect, where I'll have, let's say, a property manager attend one of my volunteer programs, and then he or she wants to implement it in her own company. Or I have a large developer that sees the value in that and then implements it within their own team. So I am the gateway, I would say, for other people to experience and try this and then bring it to their own community, their own space, their own corporation through the volunteering. And then with the wellness, the programming is based on their needs, and it can be anything from a Bollywood dance class to ignite fun and culture, or something very soulful and meditative.
Okay. And I think that makes sense also, just speaking from a business, as a business owner and on behalf of a lot of business owners that I represent, I think it also would add value. It adds some community within the workspace also among employees. You're not just in your cubicle and you're working and you don't look around and everything's completely stressful and it's always difficult. Hopefully it also creates a sense of community within each other. And it's not just so tedious and arduous. It's like, okay, we can have fun together. We can open up in different ways. I assume it would also help employees feel better about themselves and about being in their environment, in their company, so to speak. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree. And it is something that I've seen. I mean, my volunteer events, they sell out, let's say. They're full. And I see that there's a need. And I can't tell you how many times people had no idea that this was available. And I see a lot of new people coming, new businesses coming to Miami, and they want to get involved and they don't know how. And I've seen that camaraderie. I've seen how it changes people. And what I've noticed, and from my experience in Rwanda too, this uniting vision. So again, the polarity, moving beyond something that's divisive, that is what unites. And there are common elements in any culture that you go to of kindness and charity and just being a decent human being. Those really, I find, have transcended all cultures. And
I agree.
At the end of the day, businesses are people. And you have to put your people first.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think that also comes around. There is definitely more recent in the last, decade or so. Also, companies seem to be, hopefully they actually are, but they seem to be becoming more socially responsible. They actually are not just touting, okay, I have the cheapest product, or I have this, or I have the best product. Some of them are going out of their way not to just show friendliness for the environment, but also maybe some social responsibility of giving back, whether it's to a charity or to other organizations, or just, helping out in another way that seems to be where they're making it high profile. Now, hopefully I know they're doing it also so that it sheds good light to their name, but hopefully they're also doing it out of goodwill. And they're recognizing that same need that you're talking to everyone. Like you're saying, everyone really wants to see that. They want to invest in a product that also acts the way they want to, with goodwill. We're trying to help other people if they can, even if they can't solve someone's problem. But if this company can help that organization or other people or other companies or other, charities and things, organizations that might need help, you're more likely, because most humans do want to feel that way. You're more likely to buy their product or associate yourself with them or encourage the use of their product. Again, hopefully a lot of it is, whether it's a practical business sense or they just realize that is also just helpful for the world. We're all united. We're all connected no matter what happens. So I think there's more of that. That's why I think it was so important to have you on to talk about these things and, talk about your journey and what you've learned from it and how it transformed into something that's an everyday health sort of concern and thought of how to take care of yourself too. And by taking care of, I think, yourself and connecting with other people, you ultimately are hopefully transcending all of these lines and all of these divisiveness, regardless of what country you're in. You're teaching people how to heal, because we desperately need that. There's so much acrimony going on. And a lot of it even happens in businesses too. A lot of tensions and political games and am I laid off? If I'm not, the stress of everything, stress of life, it's very difficult. So I also wanted to talk to you, because we've talked a little bit about tips that employees, that employers can do for employees. I also want to talk to you about your journey. How has the empowerment of girls/women changed over time? And what else do we need to do to help women and girls feel empowered? And I do realize that actually may be Because it's one of the areas of focus I think you also focus on in Rwanda as well, right? You were, yes. So, and of course, it might change from country to country because we have different political circumstances and rights and so forth of that nature. But I do believe girls can be empowered wherever they are. It's always also how you feel about your value, you know? So how would you suggest that, you know, that we can, how it's changed over time, and what else can we do at this point to empower women and girls?
Thinking about my time in
Mhm.
Rwanda, I might even say that it's the same everywhere. The the ability to empower another person to feel like they can do anything and that anything is
Mhm.
possible. But not only that, have the support network that you need when something doesn't go to plan.
Yeah.
And what I see now, because I'm particularly in downtown Miami, many of my clients are there, so it's a younger group, people starting their careers or not sure where to go or what to do. And what I've noticed a need for is more support on the back end,
Mhm.
whether it's micro groups or checking in. And I just had a conversation with a colleague of mine about this yesterday, actually. What to
Mhm.
do to really raise the women of Miami, elevate the young girls of our
Mhm.
community. And I haven't devised a whole program for that yet, but
Mhm.
I see more mentorship, more micro communities that are forming within fields per se.
Mhm.
So, the budding
Okay.
attorneys of Miami, to have a group of young women, just to have someone older and more mature, mixed experience that has gone through it. And even in
Mhm.
Rwanda, we had the system.
Mhm.
I lived with a group of 16 girls. I was known as cousin. So I was a family member, but I was the family member that you might not see all the time. So it
Right.
created
Yes.
a sense of like
Yeah.
we understand Sam's going to leave one day. But there was
Yeah.
also a big
Yeah.
sister and there was also a mama. So it was really recreating the family
Mhm.
structure. And I think because we live in a cosmopolitan city, a lot of people are away from their families. And they might not have
Yeah.
support. And I think family and a strong group of friends is really important. And someone that can guide you along the path, not just in business, but in all areas of life.
Of life, correct. Yes. Yeah. It's tough. It's I have two children, and I've had been an entrepreneur and a career person most of my life, and my children are older, but it is hard. It's hard to navigate, and it's a new world. It's constantly changing really, really rapidly from, previous generation to now, and honestly, even the generations that came after me, it seems to be evolving even faster. So you don't know what your expectations are, right? Like, well, I'm supposed to be a mom, but also a career person, and I can't show weakness, and I can't have this problem, and I can't have that problem. And it's sort of like we need to look at the world a little differently. You know what I mean? And I think it's harder for women because they're like, okay, if I say something, am I weak? Am I this? Am I that? So it becomes an issue. How do you deal with that? And how do you not get locked in that sort of sense that I am different because I am a woman? You know what I mean? In a bad way, not in a good way. I mean, in a negative way, not a positive way, right? Because it's always good to be whatever you are, whether it's a man or a woman or whatever you are. But at the end of the day, there's different challenges for women and men, and particularly, when you give birth to children and there's stigmas about pregnancy and career and stuff like that. So I think it's really important for girls to have, and women, right, that are young women, to have mentors because it's scary. You often don't know who to talk to. Yeah.
It is. And it's a different age.
So,
I mean, there's TikTok and all of
well,
these external environmental factors that come into play and influencing the shape of a human being. I mean, it's very powerful.
correct.
I mean, what you
Yes.
see on media and Instagram and TikTok, and there's a reason why still exists, and there's a reason why Instagram marketing works. But
Yeah.
with that, there comes a responsibility for us to say, hey, wait a second, you don't be listening to that. That doesn't serve you.
No. Yes, yeah. No, it's true, and they don't. They think they have to be like what's on Instagram, or like how this woman looks like she's got it all handled. She's got 2 kids, and she looks stunning day and night, and she's in this place and in that place, and it's like it sets up an unrealistic expectation, you know. And it does it also with men too. Anyone watching, it sets up sort of a faux finish, so to speak, right? Because it's really not the way life is. It's tough. You leave work, you're tired, your feet hurt, you know, your kids are crying, complaining, you know, doesn't matter what age, whether they're smaller because they're hungry or when they're teenagers and they're just moody, you know, that's reality. You know, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't go out and have a good time and sometimes go on vacation and you might look pretty, everybody, so to speak, right? Or you're relaxed, but you're absolutely right. It sets up expectations for the impossible often, you know?
And then I would just go back to service.
Yes,
I
the service.
was as a youth and teen to be exposed to different aspects of life. And of course, I was a bit more adventurous than my Ohio parents, but
Yeah.
not many people move to Rwanda or even South Africa. But
very, very brave. They're very brave too, because it's something that's unknown. It's not like you have maybe had family there or somebody that might have helped you lead the way. You kind of plowed that way, and it's been beneficial for everybody. So yes, absolutely. So is there any other tips you'd like to give our viewers? Anything you can think of that we haven't talked about?
you know, to leave everybody today, I would say that if you're not focused on your health and well-being, start today. Do something immediately. And this might sound crazy, but it's probably the best piece of advice I could give is get enough sleep.
Yes, yeah. I'm learning that the hard way. The sleep is needed.
Sleep is so needed. So take care of yourself, eat well, and get out there and go make a difference. Go live your life, because you never know when the last day will be. So live each day the best that you can with a smile on your face, and all will be well.
I like that. I think it's perfect. Thank you. Something to always live by every day if we can. That's important, like you're saying. Thank you for leaving that with us that on a Monday too.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yes, absolutely. So we want to thank you for coming on. You know, it's been such a blessing, such a wonderful, you know, kind of change to an experience also for people to remind themselves to take care of themselves and show the value that business can have also in promoting these kinds of ideas and benefits for their employees as well, you know. So I want to thank you.
Thank you again.
Absolutely. So to all our viewers out there, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully this has been enjoyable. I'm sure it has been, and very, very informative. We do post our podcast, so if you missed part of it or if you want to see it again, by all means, go to our YouTube channel or Apple podcast channel or Spotify channel and see it. If you missed any of our other podcasts and you're interested, go ahead and you should take a look at some of them and see if anything else might be of interest to you. We want to thank everyone for always joining us and also for following us on our social media accounts. And everyone have a wonderful day. Take care. Hello.